What's up guys, my name is Ace, and yesterday we got some really big leaks for Black Ops 7, and these ones are actually coming from an official source. There were a few images that were leaked on the Xbox Call of Duty app yesterday that were intended for an internal playtest, but they ended up displaying on the public version of the game instead. And it gives us some information on some new game modes for Black Ops 7, and we got a couple images, as we can see here, and there's a lot going on in these images. There's a lot of little details to pull out, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. But before we break down the individual parts of the images themselves, let's talk about the new game modes, since we did get full descriptions for them. The first one is called Overload, and this is a 6v6 mode, and it's described as 2 teams of 6 players, each fight to control a neutral EMP device that must be delivered to the enemy HQ for score. Reach the score limit and claim victory by delivering multiple EMP devices. And to me, this sounds a lot like Uplink, although it really depends on what the EMP device is and like how it's actually transported. Like, do you pick it up like a ball, for instance? And can you throw it into the enemy's HQ? Because if so, that's just Uplink, right? Or perhaps it's handled more like a bomb would in Search and Destroy, for instance, where it just sort of attaches to your character, you can keep your gun up and shoot, and you just have to get yourself to the enemy point with the EMP device on you. It's not super clear when it comes to that, but from the sounds of it, it really does sound a whole lot like Uplink to me. And I'm kind of hoping it is. I really enjoyed that game mode. As for the other game mode, this one's quite interesting. This one's called Skirmish, and it's 20v20. So it looks like large-scale combat is coming back with Black Ops 7. And with this one, it says, 2 teams of 20 fight to complete objectives across a large map, capture points of interest, destroy payloads, and transmit valuable data to score. Use your wingsuit to flank and reach objectives before your enemy, and the first team to reach the score limit wins. So if I had to guess, this is likely going to be taking place on sections of the Avalon map, which we did get a little teaser for at the end of the official trailer. You can also kind of explore a very rough early version of Avalon by spectating in Black Ops 6 right now. You can go to like Lowtown, for instance, and zoom out with a spectating view to see Avalon. And this sounds pretty interesting because it looks like there will be multiple types of objectives that I assume you'll have to approach in different ways. And I do really like the fact that wingsuits are returning, but that was already confirmed in the trailer as well. And I also think quite a few people will be happy to see some large-scale combat return. And I wonder if they're doing this because the next Battlefield game is likely going to be launching at some point throughout the life cycle of Black Ops 7. So perhaps they want to try to compete a little bit there and offer a mode that is like somewhat comparable to Battlefield. And then the final image here that's quite interesting is this one here that says Parallax. And at this stage, we don't really know what Parallax is. It was also mentioned in the note on this image here. It says, ready to get your first taste of Parallax? So perhaps this is something entirely new and separate. Initially, when I just saw this message, I was thinking maybe it's just a map, for instance, and the people in the closed internal playtest will just be playing the map for the first time. But that doesn't really make sense for them to have this fancy separate logo for it, so I don't think it's a map. I think it's more so a game mode of some sort, and possibly something that's outside of the standard multiplayer game modes. Like perhaps it's something separate entirely from the regular multiplayer experience. We really don't know at this point, but it is quite interesting to see that. In either case, now it's time to start taking a much closer look at the images themselves and see what kind of details we can pick out. And the first thing we're going to talk about here is the elephant in the room that most people notice right away. This guy's wearing an Exo Suit, and it also looks like a jetpack attached to that Exo Suit. And that's interesting because in the official Call of Duty podcast, they did mention there will not be jetpacks or wall running in this game. But maybe they're just talking about by default, because as far as we can tell, the other characters don't have this exosuit and jetpack. Maybe this is just a character model and it's just designed to look cool. Maybe they do have jetpacks in the form of a perk or a score streak or something along those lines. Or who knows, maybe this is Parallax and that's something entirely separate from the standard multiplayer experience. And in that experience, we do have jetpacks. Or maybe it's even a PvE like survival experience. And maybe that's an AI enemy and they have access to exosuits and we don't. In either case, that definitely raises a ton of questions because they very clearly stated we wouldn't be seeing jetpacks and wall running. And this seems to go against that. But again, it's only on this character model. I'm not seeing it on any of the other character models as far as we can tell. Now, additionally in this image, we can see Dog, which is almost definitely going to be a score streak. And then toward the left side of the image, we can see something that was shown off in the trailer as well. This would almost definitely be a score streak in multiplayer if I had to guess as well. So these aren't really entirely new. Interestingly, behind those though, you can see there's an American flag. So this map or experience or whatever is set in the States. So it's not just set on Avalon, like a bunch of the maps in Black Ops 6 at least. We can also see a character diving in the background, so Omni Movement, which they have talked about. Omni Movement is returning, and they said it would be evolving. And based on leaks in the past, the evolution of that is likely just going to be wall jumps and wall dives. And then finally, the operator that's closest to us is using an interesting looking gun, and I believe this is the same gun that showed up in the trailer as well right here. It looks like it's the same gun. And that's pretty much it as far as what I was able to gather from this image. As I said, there's a lot going on there. Now let's move on to the next image here. And in this one, we get some closer looks at operators. For the character on the right, looks like they're using a semi-auto shotgun, kind of based on a Benelli M4, but a more futuristic version of that. And on the left, it's some kind of a futuristic gun. It's kind of hard to identify what this is based on exactly. It does look like it has an interesting type of side-loading magazine, somewhat reminiscent of the PDW-57 in Black Ops 2, and it does sort of seem like it's chambered in 5.7x28, just like the PDW-57 as well as the P90, and the PDW is kind of an evolution of the P90 if I'm not mistaken. So perhaps this is just another evolution on top of that of the PDW. After that, on that character's left arm, you'll notice there's a little screen display, and this actually shows up on the other operator we can see here as well. And we can't quite see it for every other operator, but if this is on all of the operators, this is likely going to be how we control or call in our score streaks in the game. And I kind of hope that's the case. I hope we get really fast animations for that as well, like we had in some of the earlier Call of Duty games, rather than what we've seen in many of the newer Call of Duty games where like calling in a simple UAV, that animation just takes way too long and it's kind of annoying. Outside of that, you can see on the bottom left in the background, there is an RCXD, or what appears to be an RCXD, so likely going to be a score streak there. And then finally, I noticed we actually know exactly where this location is, and it does appear in the trailer, and I was right when that trailer came out. This is going to be a multiplayer map. If we freeze this clip right at the beginning, before they blow up this area where the character models are standing, this circular area appears to be the little fountain that they are standing in the image. You can see the van in the background, that corresponds perfectly. Also, the shape and style of the buildings in the background, that lines up perfectly with that area. So this effectively confirms that this area is going to be a multiplayer map as expected. And we can see exactly where those character models are standing. And that's pretty much all I was able to gather here when it comes to this. Obviously, we could go into more detail as far as the individual items on the character models, but typically in Call of Duty, any sort of tactical looking items that show up on a character's skin, they're not actually usable items in game. Like a lot of times you'll see like a pistol holstered on them, but you can't actually use that pistol in the game or some other form of equipment. So I don't think it's worth looking too deep into those elements, since they're likely just cosmetic elements. Same thing with the helmet on the one character, for instance. It's very interesting, looks really cool. And I do like the general aesthetic with this, with it being more of a future setting. Unfortunately, this aesthetic is not likely to stay for very long, and I'm sure we'll have some clowns and cartoon characters in no time in the game. But based on the images we're seeing here, at least, I'm liking the general setting and aesthetic and tone to this. In either case, that is gonna wrap it up for today's video. All of the things I was able to find in these images. I know when it comes to these, there's always a big debate as to whether or not this was intentionally released or if it was an accident. I'm in the camp that believes that this was likely an accident. Usually their marketing is a very controlled process and they don't want to be spoiling too much. And it's not out of the question at all that for their closed internal playtests, they're running on a very similar version of the game and something could have easily gotten screwed up along the way. But regardless, even if this was an intentional controlled leak, I don't think it really matters. It is nice to see a little bit more information here. Definitely got a whole lot of questions about that Exo Suit showing up, but the fact that it only shows on one character model leads me to believe that it's not going to be like our base movement system at least, and it's probably something else. Now, of course, these are just the things that I noticed, as well as my thoughts and opinions on them, and this is where I want to hear from you guys in those comments down below. How are you feeling about these leaked images so far? Is this getting you more excited for Black Ops 7 or less excited, or are you still just sort of waiting to see more? Just let me know down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.